Hey, Zil, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
What kind of stuff have you been up to lately? Because, I don't know, I've been doing like new model kits and stuff like that, and I don't know, I'm always interested in doing something new, or, I don't know, I feel like I need something different this time.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been kind of circling the D&D brain rot little spiral drain, whatever you want to call it. But, that's kind of gone me thinking about a lot of different interesting other ways to do, games and like character-driven narratives and shit. And honestly, I've been thinking a lot about the old Guy Online Island of Dr. Moreau thing.
I think I heard about that before. I never played it before. Like, I heard about that like well after I started like posting and stuff like that, or maybe I caught glimpses of it like here and there when I was looking for stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny, when I was starting to get into TF, it was something that was still ongoing, so I kind of was like hovering around the edges, watching people kind of interact. They had like, people would make characters and then they'd be in the setting, and then there was this whole overarching story with the doctor who was like doing shit to people, and like there'd be like art commissioned off of like the changes they were going through.
So wait. Was one person like in charge of the whole thing, or like because somebody had to like play the doctor or something like that?
Yeah, originally it was run by, I think there were like 3 different people who were like kind of involved, and one of them actually was Aranya, who was playing the doctor himself. So it was like a whole thing at the time.
That's pretty big, because lots of people have Aranya's name in their mouths. So yeah,
and it's funny, I think a lot of people look back on it and are like, damn, I really wish I could have, been a part of it and like gone to participate. And honestly, I'm just really excited because we have a sponsor here today to just kind of share the good word about a new TTRPG based on the island of Dr. Moreau.
Sponsor?
Yeah,
oh.
A whole ass sponsor.
Yeah. Okay. So that means that if I wanted to, I could kind of maybe get my shot at doing that stuff that passed me by.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting that they're doing this Kickstarter. There's a lot of different artists who are contributing art to it. It's being led by Ulysses Duckler, and very much working in part with the folks who originally put the Guy Online RP together. And there's a lot of really interesting mechanics, and there's like cast of characters you can pick from, and like bespoke art in the book, and like all these different ways to kind of get into it. And it's set in 2005, so we get that good mid-aughts nostalgia that all of us are clearly itching for.
Oh yes, the very exotic, almost 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait. Let me see. I'm looking at this, and it has it has a lot of artists. You mentioned Anya, Mel Echavaria, Black Sheep CF, Anger Boda, Bunka, McClody, Redacted, Fletch, Bianca, Gazanging, Winter Sky, and Snowy. So that if you can't quite think of something yourself, you have some pretty inspired artwork that should be able to kick something off for you.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm just so excited for this to get launched in early May. It's going to be really cool to see what the tiers available are, and all the different little goodies that I'm sure are going to be contained within. There's a gorgeous map that's already been designed with a lot of different locations, and I'm really curious just to like pick up on what each of these little spots is going to be, and what kind of TFs might get inflicted on those who venture in. So
all right, well, I guess now this would be my chance, and I mean, then you could have a little curated experience. But if you had an idea, if you didn't get to explore that, just looking back in the old forums or something like that, or maybe you think you could do it better, anything like that, that's your chance.
Yeah, now's your chance. And hey, the exciting part is the GM is technically a player too, so you get, even if you're like wanting to get a group together to run this shit, like you're gonna get to do some cool shit too, even if you're kind of leading the story. So I don't know, it seems pretty bomb ass, I gotta say.
I think the very best thing about this is that it is community made, so that way you're never really just feeling like it's just some outsider kind of sticking in what they think is popular to just like surf FA's browse feature here and there, and then they're just like, people seem to like this, so you got a lot there for you.
honestly, it's nice. There's like a community run project that wants to like sponsor us and also like get the word out about it. And obviously, I mean, we've had folks on who are running projects related to TF before, and I believe very strongly in, you know, community supporting community projects. So I'm just really excited to see where this goes.
All right. Well, that's really cool. I'm glad to be made aware of it. I hope that you're glad to be made aware of it. So the Island of Dr. Monroe TTRPG is Kickstarter. Can they find the Kickstarter? Like, just searching through that or what?
Yep. If you, we'll have the link in the show notes, but you can check it out. And I'm just really excited to see the campaign and where it leads.
I'm really glad to know. Yeah, everybody, check it out. Again, that's Island of Dr. Monroe, tabletop RPG, TTRPG, or sometimes the colloquialism of IODM. You can find it that way, too, if you have to really, really search hard. But it's going to be there. So, yeah, everybody, thanks again for listening, and enjoy the upcoming episode of the TF Tuesday podcast featuring Zill and myself.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TF Tuesday Pod. My name is Zill. It's good to see you all back here again today. I have to say that Toronto has been absolutely fucking miserable the past few days with its weather and its rain, and I am not a fan of that. So very much a boo on that front, but, you know, we're managing, as it were. I am joined by my illustrious co-host, K-Libra. How are you doing, K-Libra?
Well enough. God, sleep has been hard to get. Good sleep has been like getting harder to get a hold of, so it's been low energy days for me recently. But it'll get better, I suppose, at some point. Probably go back to the optometrist. I mean, my eyes feel better, but they're not normal yet. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they're not 100% where they were originally. So
yeah, they're not normal, but. Whatever, I guess. I could say that, cold rain, I hate. It's the worst kind of weather to me. I'll walk through a blizzard. Don't ask me to walk through cold rain.
I think you're probably on the edges in terms of being someone who would embrace a blizzard over rain, but
yes, I am. The rain and the cold is the worst. The only thing I like is that it makes the sky gray.
Yeah. Well, I will say that, the shadows do remind me of Year of the Shadow that's ongoing right now. So very much looking forward to seeing my boy in October.
Yeah, it just happened out of nowhere because suddenly they're like, yeah, Shadow is great marketing strategy too. They haven't played up Shadow in a long time, but now they're seeing it. And they're just going to go with it for the movie and their game and stuff like that. I just hope that they make stuff that's really good.
I hope so too, because I want more merch of my boy, my husband.
You'll get it. Shadow's been extremely popular. I'm happy Knuckles is finally getting some limelight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, I want them to make good stuff for everybody, and we make good stuff too, and you can help us keep making good stuff by joining Patreon. It was very helpful for our motivation, especially when I have to go and edit these things and try to make them nice, and it's I mean, all kinds of support, like the subs and everything, or just like the little comments left on stuff. It's great, but if you're willing to just throw a couple of bucks, that's nice.
Yeah, agreed. And we always appreciate the support and the interactions that we get from everyone. So a special thank you for that. And sometimes they enable our entire episodes, like the last one. So, special shout out to all the wonderful patrons that we have been very blessed to have.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I'm very excited for the very special guest that we have lined up to speak with us today. So, KotaCat, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. My name is Kota. I like to draw.
Hell yeah.
I also don't like the cold.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it either, so I feel you there.
Let's go.
The cold is the only weather I get to wear my cloak in, though.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's true. It is, it is ideal for suiting as equinox weather, but only if you're outside and it's not raining or snowing, which actually is kind of a unusual combination sometimes. But yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Obviously, we've seen your stuff online and really dig it. And I would just love to hear a little bit more about your journey into discovering TF and then into like the TF fandom itself. So what was it that sparked the interest in transformation for you?
These are two very different topics because I did not know there was a TF community until last year. But I have always been into the trope. Like, I can remember as far back as like 6 years old, and I was watching this movie, and it was you guys probably know about it. It's called Willow, and it's got like the little halfling man. He's got a magic wand, and there's a scene where everyone gets turned into pigs, and I was just like, well, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then for like the next like month, we would just play pretend we were turning into animals. And that's probably the earliest instance I can think of. But I've always been into that.
That's a pretty solid hook, I would say.
You know, and then everyone knows Pinocchio, the donkeys. It's just like, that was a lot of kids that got furry pilled with that movie. It's a classic.
Oh, 100%. It is a classic, and I think the number of times people return to Pleasure Island as a concept is emblematic as to the hold it has on many people in the fandom and by holding
the iron grip of Pinocchio Pleasure Island scenes.
Yeah. So you mentioned you didn't even know that there was a like fandom online until a year ago. So what was it that like finally clued you in to there actually being like a space online where people were like super into this?
So growing up, I was in I'm not going to go a lot into my backstory, but my family was very extremely conservative Christian, deep South Republican United States people. So like I was not allowed to express interest in anything that was unusual. So this was something that I kept to myself well into my adult years, that like, oh man, nobody is into this. It's a horrible thing. I am the only one. And then, then I had access to the internet after I became an adult, and I would like look up videos or images or stories about transformation stuff. But when I started posting my art online, there were suddenly a bunch of people who are all very specifically into it. And I was just like, where have these people come from? Oh, this is actually a niche subgenre kind of deal, and there's a whole community built around it. And that was pretty fascinating, but also very cool and very affirming and comforting. I was like, oh, actually, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting that it kind of sounds like the community found you.
That's literally what happened. I made a Twitter account because my friend said, you should put your art on Twitter. And I said, okay. And I had like 20 followers. They were all my personal friends. And then one day a comic I drew got like 3,000 likes and got posted all over subreddits. And then all these people showed up. And I was just like, oh, they're here. Okay. This is a real community.
Yep. It's something. Okay, so it's funny because you ask about finding the fandom and everything, because I didn't go looking for a fandom or a community. I just was looking for content, and then realized there was people that were into the specific
so
thing.
It kind of found you as well in a way.
I stumbled across it. It was incidental. If I was going to find the stuff I was looking for, it was going to be, surrounded by those people.
Those would be the people producing the thing you were looking for. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that with the power of the internet and subreddits, like you make one piece of art after maybe having already made some, and it just kind of gets circulated around, and all of a sudden all these people show up. How did it feel when all these people kind of showed up out of the blue and were like, oh yes, we love your stuff and we want more?
It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. It was validating in a way, but it was also terrifying because I was like, oh, I went from 20 people who I all know to like 2,000 people in like a week, and I had never had that kind of audience before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it the first time that you had posted something like TF related, or was it after actually like a few times that then this comic like kind of took off?
I had been drawing my werewolf character for quite a while on Twitter because he was kind of like my little main OC, my little precious Blorbo that I would draw. But it was literally just a stupid comic of him being like, hey girl, do you like dogs? Because I'm a dog. And then he turned into a werewolf, and that's what it was. And everyone's like, haha, relatable comic, funny, we love this. And I was like, oh, there's people here now. Hi.
Yep, that's all
really
it takes.
Yeah, I feel like that happens to a good chunk of artists. It's like there's like one specific thing that maybe you make, and it's not even always necessarily like something that like was like super thought out, and then all of a sudden the people show up and they're like, oh yes, I'm here for more.
That's exactly what happened with the Bowsette thing.
It was
a cute thing. Yeah, you just saw the comic of I don't know how many people are aware of how the Bowsette thing started.
Comic,
so just in case, it was just like Mario and Bowser looking like real frustrated that Peach wouldn't have either of them, and then Bowser takes a look at the fucking Super Crown. They look at each other. Mario and a Lady Bowser walk by, and it turns heads, and they're like, where did she come from? And that was it. And holy shit, now the internet's never going to be the same again. Mario's never going to be the fucking same again. How long until they actually just integrate that stuff into the games? I don't know. We'll see.
It's a great question. I would like to think at some point they will, but I guess we won't know for a while at the very least.
Never be sure until it happens.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's great that, you know, it was based off of like just your own kind of creative output just being like received in a positive manner and then kind of taking off from there. It's funny, I when I initially saw your stuff, it was also based on, I don't think it was like that comic specifically, but it was definitely because I saw your character pop up a few times, not only like your own art, but I think in maybe some trades with other folks. And I was like, oh, there's this white-furred werewolf I see like showing up a lot of places. I should like look into this. So he definitely has a lot of reach.
He's my special guy. And it's funny because his design is extremely basic. He's literally just a blank white wolf. And I think that's maybe what makes him relatable, is because he looks so generic that you're just like, yeah, I can imprint on that. That's a werewolf.
Oh yeah, I believe it. I think a lot of people are drawn towards stuff that they can, you know, create their own like attachments to in their minds, and, you know, having something that can be like at a base level relatable obviously helps.
Do you want to know the reason he's white?
Yes, I do.
It's so I wouldn't have to color him in while I was drawing. It was a design.
Yeah, you got the Super Saiyan angle.
It was a design decision just born from sheer laziness. It's just like, I don't want to color him in every time I draw him. I'll just make him blank. And now
I mean, it
iconic.
Works. It works for what it is. Yeah. Honestly, I can think of like maybe like, and maybe this is just because my own spaces are maybe smaller than they should be, but like I can only think of like, I think 2 other people who have like very like prominent white werewolf characters. So it is actually like kind of unique on that front too, at the very least. So it helps in terms of making him stand out from the crowd, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I suppose.
Well, remember that the idea of a werewolf is pretty standardized with a lot of people. So if they want to look like a wolf, whatever that is, you know, werewolves often get like the dark brown fur or something like that, or black or gray, usually really, really dark. So, that's one way. Also, I think another reason that the wolf is very appealing is that you draw characters in a really approachable way. So it can bring anybody in. It's not like my stuff where people are just like, oh, that's interestingly done, and they move along. You know what I mean?
Approachable, like, that's interesting. Like, I thank you for the compliment. Is it because they have soft eyes? I don't know.
I mean,
I think it is partially like the eyes and the face. But sorry, go ahead, Libra.
It's the eyes, it's the face, it's the more like a simple style. It's very easy. Let me see. How do I put it?
It's digestible. You look at it and you know
you
what it
don't
is.
really have to. Yeah, you don't have to look hard at all at what it is. Everything is easily represented, and yeah, I mean, big eyes usually help. Well, bigger eyes, they don't have like anime eyes. And so it's so yeah, it gets anybody who sees it. It's just like, oh, it's cute, it's nice, it's approachable. Furries generally like that stuff too. And then, like, I think you could just really show your work to just about anybody and just be like, oh, how interesting or how cool, whatever, you know? That's the kind of vibe that you struck for yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. I've never heard my art described as approachable, so I just wanted to ask what you meant by that. Like, so thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Have you been drawing for a long time anyway? Because, like, you said you weren't allowed to express anything, so...
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, like how was art something that you built up? Because, I mean, you can't be this good and just be also a natural. You do need practice and time.
I have been drawing since I was old enough to hold a crayon in my grubby little mitts. My grandmother has saved pretty much every scrap of paper I have ever like touched. So she made me this giant scrapbook of really old compiled art from when I was like 3, 4, 5, 6, just like through the years, and it's all just like all just little guys. Like it's the exact same stuff that I draw now, where it's just like a cat in overalls or like a dog with a hat on, or like, and they're just having a good time and vibing. And when I saw that, because like I was so young that I don't remember drawing these, you know what I mean? But she's like, here's all the stuff you do when you're a kid. I was just like, oh no, I'm the same person that I was when I was 4. But yeah, so I've always loved art. I've always loved drawing. I mean, my parents sort of supported me drawing. They did the classic parent thing where they're like, sure, you can draw when you're a kid, but then you have to grow up and stop drawing and being creative and being imaginative. You have to get a job and become a cog in the machine, or you're worthless in society. So around the time I was in high school and I started, seriously considering art for a career, they kind of started being like, you can't have a career in art. That's not a real job. You will be poor forever. And they're not wrong. I am poor, but I'm also happy. So there's that. But yeah. So as long as I was drawing appropriate subject material, they were happy. I couldn't draw anything weird and show them.
Yeah, that figures.
Yeah, I had to.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I had to keep the drawings of werewolf men hidden. But anything, if it was like a generic tiger or a unicorn, they'd be like, "Oh, how nice, how pretty."
I'll say that I feel like that's definitely not an uncommon experience in terms of parents not being super supportive of artistic pursuits. And at the end of the day, like you said, like if it brings you happiness, that is like one of the most important things. And of course, I think there's a lot to be said about the way in which society often looks down upon the creative arts while also desperately needing them.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were all, at home and during COVID, like everyone was watching things on TV and, watching movies and all this stuff. And that's all creative work. And, all of a sudden that had an outsized importance. But, when asked in like a generic way, people are like, oh, art, like, what good is that for? When, art is such an important part of culture and provides like the foundations for so many different communities, including this one. So
yeah, nobody respects creatives. They just want to steal our stuff.
Yeah, pretty much, and it sucks.
I don't know why everything looks nice, but surely it has nothing to do with art. Like the fact that the stupid fucking air filter behind me has a look that's at all sleek and possibly practical. Nothing to do with any kind of artistic outlook. All you can do is have a machine make it because it's too hard and inaccessible for anybody to do anything. God, I don't have sympathy for those people at all anymore.
Yeah, I can't get onto that topic because it will just become me like ranting angrily like old man yells at cloud with like shaking my fist and
we can do
no,
that.
not here. That is not what this is about.
We can do that if you want.
I'm just saying, if we get on that topic, I'm not going to get off it. So
yeah,
we can't get into that.
Well, then let me ask. Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, then let me ask. Besides all that kind of stuff in the background, what would you say was like the most difficult obstacle you felt you faced when you were starting out trying to create like transformation themed artwork in particular?
Well, Well, I guess myself was my largest obstacle that I had because, again, little repressed Christian me, I was like, oh no, bodies are bad. I shouldn't be drawing bodies, you know? So one of the things that, like, helped me kind of explore, like, you know, like, that sort of dysmorphia or that sort of, like, insecurity with my own body was transformation art. Whereas, like, it would be taboo to draw just a person, but like, what if the person was turning into a giraffe? That's much better. There we go.
Right.
And my brain was like, all right, I'll allow it. We have removed that stigma.
So it was, so in a way, it was almost like a way to like do like find a loophole in your brain around this like stigma.
Basically, it was a way that I could explore and kind of cope with my discomfort and my dysmorphia, because you cannot tell your Christian parents that you're having thoughts that are not good Christian thoughts, you know what I mean? So it's like, they were very adamant that I should be a lady, and it made me like depressed and uncomfortable and just I hated it. You know, they're like, no, you have to wear the makeup, you have to wear the dress, you have to. I actually made my mom cry once because I told her I wouldn't wear makeup, and she started crying. She was just like, how will a man ever want you if he won't wear makeup? And I'm just like, well, geez, I didn't know I was that ugly. But that is something that that I did explore a lot in my early art, was just things that were uncomfortable for me that I couldn't tackle any other way, where it's just like, that was one of the things that I could do.
Yeah. As someone who grew up in a Catholic household, I get
feel
where you're
me.
coming from, trust me. So, yeah.
Do you know what?
Go ahead.
I wonder how many people who are into TF art are actually were people who were sexually repressed growing up, and that was just kind of like, again, like a way to destigmatize it. Because, like...
Oh, I mean, you have no idea how many people that is.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I wonder how many.
Oh, a lot. I would argue
probably over a majority, honestly.
Yes. I've spoken to a lot of different people, and all of them have some sort of problem when it comes to their relationship with sex, whether it's like gender dysphoria related, or stigmatized through like shitty family and parents, or religion, or just a general disgust of it,
right?
You know, or disgust, or also, not to be outdone, misanthropy. Yeah. Fucking, like, there are people who just end up hating other people, and like, I hate humans, I hate being a human, and all that kind of stuff, and it all funnels into this, and it's just like, wow, what a nice thing if I could become this or turn somebody else into something, and that would make it okay. It would erase all questions, all doubts, all concerns. That's the kind of stuff that I've been seeing for the past, it must have been almost 15 years now, right?
Yeah, 15 years.
Shit. 15 years of this stuff. And if people wonder why I'm fucking grouchy,
yeah, I mean...
Nah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was having a chuckle. I relate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
It's a tough... Yeah, we actually go for it.
Tell me how you relate.
Oh, to you feeling grumpy?
Yeah.
Oh, I also get grumpy. It's nothing deep.
Well,
I was just agreeing with you.
No, it's nothing deep. But yeah, I mean, I was just wondering if it had anything to do with anything particular that I've said, because you said that you didn't really know about a community until like a couple of years ago or something like that. But me, I've been through the cycle of talking to people, having clients, doing the commission thing, this and that, just trying to make friends, that failing, this and that. I got too much shit for any single recording to talk about.
I get it.
So I figured that maybe by now you probably have had a few experiences, because what the fuck is your follower count? It's, you know, on Twitter it's 28,000 people. Jesus motherfucker.
It is terrifying, as I have said. Like extremely validating, because just like, oh, people like my art, but also terrifying because like, oh no, I'm being perceived. So I pretend
Yeah.
to not see the number.
Yeah.
I pretend it's not
you do
there.
see it.
I don't look at it.
That is a good thing. That is a good thing
Yeah.
because, as far as I'm concerned, the more popular you get in this fandom, the more you are dehumanized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really fucking sucks because, there are the people who will just make this shit miserable. We recorded an episode about why transformation artists who are, like, very popular, like, really strongly loved, why did they go away? And there's so many reasons for that, so it's good that, number one, you try not to put too much stock into the number, and number two, that I just want to let you know that if you start having, like, weird experiences or disappointed, or you'll be like, why are people acting this way even though we're, like, in the same fucking camp, yeah, that's not exclusive to you, and it's problems. I don't want to get into that.
It's not a reflection on you.
But but I wanted to reassure you that there's a lot of shit, and you just be happy and make the stuff you're willing to make and do what you're willing to do. Have a healthy contempt for your audience is what I'm also saying.
But I love my audience.
You do. You can love them and be kind of like, nah, you stand over there for now.
Well, this is my policy. I do not engage in the quote unquote discourse of the day. I simply do not partake of it. And if someone says something unkind or hateful toward me, I mute them. And then they go away forever.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. I will say the number one rule of Twitter, or whatever it's called now, is don't tweet, in my opinion. You can put your, like, art up and stuff and everything. I don't really count that, but, like, my number one rule is don't tweet. And my life is better for it. Sounds like a similar approach.
If you get caught up in the bad faith arguments, there's never a winner.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to, like, the art process in general and, like, creating stuff, and I want to, like, speak specifically to the personal stuff outside of, like, maybe what the audience is expecting you to make. How do you generally go about, like, picking a topic or subject or theme? Like, do you have, like, a rough list you're hoping to work through, or do you simply kind of dive into whatever it is that you're vibing with at a given moment?
Well, generally when I start drawing, I don't have an idea of what I want to draw. I don't know if that's a normal thing or not, but I'll usually just start throwing out shapes, and then I'll say, oh, this looks like this, and then I'll just go with that. So if I start, like, drawing some circles and some lines and it turns into Elias, it is now a drawing of Elias. Because a lot of my personal work is me unwinding down from doing commissions. So a lot of the time I'm not really looking to get very focused or do a lot of that kind of stuff. It's just me, like, unwinding and vibing and just drawing what I feel in the moment. A lot of the stuff that I draw obviously is transformation focused because that's stuff that I like.
Right.
Sometimes when I do studies, I'll do a character study or I'll do, like, an anatomy study, and my goal with that is to obviously just get better at what I'm drawing. So I'll go through, like, so what you see is, like, one drawing that I post, but I tend to have, like, 4 or 5 sketches that I'm, like, refining until I get something that I want to keep refining. So that's something that I do.
No, that makes sense. It's interesting. You almost, like, the way you kind of phrased it, I find is really interesting in that you kind of throw things out onto the paper and then you let your mind kind of, like, start to form those connections and be like, okay, so I can turn this into that, and then kind of proceed from there. And it's almost like putting out a lot of ideas and then, like, putting them through a filter or a funnel almost until you distill it into whatever it is that your mind was maybe subconsciously thinking about.
That's basically how it goes, where I'm just, like, I'm doodling until I get something that I'm like, oh, I really like this, and then I'll focus on that and I'll finish that, and then everything else just goes into the scrap pile.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you find that that's a rewarding way to do your personal art, at least, like, in terms of, like, doing it after commissions as a way to wind down, or was that something that you kind of settled on as a way to still ensure you were doing personal art just in general?
I think doing personal art is extremely important, even though like art is my work, it's also my hobby. It's something that I enjoy doing, and if I don't draw for myself, I will go insane. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
that's just how it is, where like because I want to draw, like I feel a need to draw. If I take a day off from drawing, all I can think about that day is how much I want to draw. Like even though I have to take the day off to like maybe like I sprained my wrist drawing too much, or like maybe there's a lot of work that needs to be done around the house, but the whole time I'm just like, man, I wish I was drawing right now. It is a need.
Yeah.
I love drawing. I'm not even being. I sincerely, I love making art, and I love when people are happy to get my art. Like if I could draw for free, I would draw all day. I would.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalistic.
We live in a
hellscape,
society,
so, you know.
And I'm very
We live in a
happy that
society.
people give me money for my art. That makes me very happy, and I do need it. But if I could draw for free, I would, just because I just love drawing, and I just like making people happy.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I think every serious artist should probably get funded.
Yeah.
I
I would like that governmental funding.
Really, because people discuss this thing of like, oh, what are you contributing to society? Well, what does a movie contribute? What does a video game really contribute? It's not making anything, is it? Oh, but you like it, so you're willing to pay for it. Well, it's the same motherfucking thing. You eagerly await the next piece of work that you're going to be doing. Might as well help us live.
Yeah, honestly.
Fuck, man. But yeah, it's actually, you know, because you mentioned that you also use art to explore things and express things. You still find yourself exploring with your art after like these few years that you've been really just getting into it at this level? By this level, I mean like, you know, it became your job as well as your hobby, which steps things up in terms of intensity and frequency.
I feel like now I am more comfortable with my body and with myself as a person. There's a lot less shame and stigmatization attached to it, mainly through finding this community and being able to develop a more healthy relationship with myself. So I'm not exploring those darker themes more these days. I'm more exploring like stylistic choices. So I'm more experimenting with like my own style and how to portray things, and I like simplicity. Like you said, like I like a readable picture. I just like simplicity. You know, I'm that person who will just like, I look at those old medieval manuscripts where everything is just flat and bold colors, and I'm just like, yes, I love this. Look at that little monk. He's got his little snake in one hand and his book in the other, and I love that stuff. So I've been trying to kind of like push my art towards like a more simplistic style, but also just a more readable style, where like something that like makes it scratches the itch in my brain.
Yeah.
So that's more of what I've been doing. I also love messy art, like art where I can see like people's scratchy lines or like their sketches or like the brush strokes. I love that stuff. So I've been trying to kind of like, because my art tends to have a very clean look a lot of the time, so I've been trying to like kind of push that towards a more gesturistic style, where you can kind of, I want people to be able to see when they look at my art, like where my hand was going, like the arc of the lines. Like I want to kind of capture the movement of the character with the motions of my hand as I'm drawing. So the lines should kind of like give you that sense of movement and being alive. And yeah, I'm not there yet, but that I aspire, as we should all.
I got a couple of tips for you on that if you'd like to try them out at some point.
Oh, thank you, King.
So what you can do is, one, you can go with the perspective that my one really good art professor was teaching the class, which was he believed that you should never fully clean up a drawing or a piece of art because the imperfections or whatever's left behind are an indicator of your journey to get to what it became. So that's a perspective. A more practical way of doing it is, I know that it's very popular for people to do digital art and say, here's your sketch layer and here's your line layer. Instead, don't do the line layer thing. Just clean up the existing sketch to your satisfaction, and you'll be able to keep more of that raw feeling that you had, because it can get lost really easily when you're trying to do the clean line thing. So those are the two tips that you can use or not use to your satisfaction.
I appreciate that. Those are actually both things that I already do. But I appreciate that. I am being validated.
Oh, never mind then.
Oh yeah.
You'll be fine.
Like when I post my time lapses, it's usually just me making a really bad sketch and then cleaning it as I go. I don't very rarely I will do the 2-layer thing if it's a really complicated pose and I want it to be a little cleaner so it's more readable. But most of the time it's just because I didn't start drawing digitally until I was in my late teens. So almost all of my experience growing up was just drawing, pencil, paper, Crayolas, that kind of stuff. So that's still a lot of the habits that I have from all those years I spent drawing traditionally, whereas you didn't have another layer on the paper. You just had to clean up what you had. Yeah. And if you had a mistake, it was there. I work a lot with ink, watercolor, marker, that kind of stuff that I had. So I tend to kind of try to preserve that in my digital art, where it's if I make a mistake, I want to work with the mistake and see what happens. I don't always want to fix the mistake.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Would you say that there were specific inspirations, either in the fandom or outside of it, that helped you hone in on that sort of look and style, or was it wholly influenced by your background in traditional art creation that then just kind of carried over?
I have so many inspirations. I have to get out the internet here, because I can't shout out every single person who's inspired me, because we would be here all night, because the list is far too long. But old 80s animated movies, oh my goodness, where you can see the line work and stuff. Oliver and Company. I love the animation in Oliver and Company. Everyone's oh, it's messy, it's ugly. Yeah. I'm just oh, I am obsessed with it. The Secret of Nim, beautiful. Land Before Time, Chef's Kiss, An American Tale. Basically anything by our good man. Oh no, I forgot his name. Don Bluth. My favorite animator. I forgot his name. Pretty much anything by him was a big inspiration for me growing up. A lot of those movies are comfort movies for me. Or that rough line work, I was talking about, 101 Dalmatians. I was obsessed with that movie as a child. I would put my paper on the TV screen. We had those big chunky late 90s, early 2000s TVs. I would put the paper on the screen and I would trace the little doggies with my pencil on the screen. There is an artist. What is his name? Froud. Brian Froud. He's an illustrator. He was the guy who, do you know him?
Oh yeah.
Everyone should know. Everyone should know him.
Before, yeah.
He did all of the concept art for the Jim Henson movies, The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth.
Yes.
His work is massively inspirational. I have 3 of his art books, and I also have 2 different books on the making of the movies, where there's just a bunch of concept art in them. And the costumes and the creatures, and his style is so weird, but also just so good. And those sketches where you can see he's maybe he would spill a coffee on one of his drawings, and he would turn that into it into the background, but he would just be that's fine. He'd take his brush and turn the coffee stain into a tree branch, or into a creature. And I thought 12-year-old me was just oh, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Oh my goodness, so massive inspiration there. And then more recently, in recent times, a lot of my art mutuals, are people who inspire me greatly. I am very much inspired by Greek Celtic. Their art is very good. I love the way that they can express their ideas in just a few line strokes. I love that. I'm into that. The artist.
Yeah, she does amazing stuff. Just the character development around the 2 OCs that I see the most often is just it's been so interesting to see and like develop.
Yeah, the world
over
building,
time. So
where the sketches
yeah.
with the different creatures and all that stuff is really good stuff. And then another inspiration that I had, there is a former, I think they were at Titmouse, but I don't know how to pronounce their name, but their Twitter tag is Ziggy Zags, and they draw the feral men. I love their art. It's extremely expressive. It's extremely loose. It's the things that I aspire to be able to do someday. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I definitely think that as like, and I'm sure Libra, you can chime in too. Like when I started working on my own art, it was very much like building off of, or at least it felt like building off of the styles and forms that other people who had come before me had already like kind of laid out, and then making my own tweaks to make it more unique. And so I always find that to be an interesting question to ask, because like at the end of the day, art is always like cumulative in a sense, and we're always looking back to what people did before us and then trying to innovate in our own kind of interesting ways. So I always find it interesting to hear where like, you know, people got inspired from and what kind of influenced them on stuff.
I end up wanting to just kind of, I do a similar thing where sometimes I'll see a shape. That's when I don't know what I want to draw. Sometimes I go in with something I want to do, but then if I get frustrated, I just start scribbling, and then if I see a shape or perceive a form, it's something that I do. I don't know. When I started drawing, or at least consciously tried to make things, I guess I just wanted to tell stories or something, which, you know, I hold myself back from these days, but it's something that I remember. It's between that and thinking about, I guess, possibilities is another thing that is part of how I decide I want to create things. Even with this Lego, which was huge for me for a long time, I would make things based on just a few select pieces. I think this piece looks cool, I want to integrate it into something. And then the idea would form around those things. It would take me places. Yeah. Relationship to creativity is a rocky one, and it's mine, you know.
I feel like every creative has some kind of a rocky relationship with their art, because I don't always love what I draw either. You know, like sometimes I get frustrated because I'm not at the level where I want to be. I am never at the level where I want to be. Like I can finish a drawing and I can be happy with it. Like I'll be satisfied, but I want to do more. I want to do better. Like I want more. And that's something I want to work on more. Is I want to do more practice sketches, and I want to start pushing my forms better. I want to start doing more anatomy stuff, and I want to kind of reach a place where I can say, not that I've peaked, but that I am finally, like, you know, I'm happy with what I've got going on.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I feel like your relationship with art is at a baseline. It's going to be the thing that's going to get you there anyway, because you said you love it and you go days without maybe trying not to draw, you know, for the sake of your health or pain or anything, and then you'll just think about wanting to do it, and you love doing that. And that's the kind of relationship that I'd like to have that I do not have. Mine is different. So you're going to get there eventually, I think.
The best way to start loving art is to just draw every day, even if you hate it. Even, like, it can be a 5-minute doodle, but you've made something.
I've heard that kind of thing before, and so it feels like a daunting commitment. I'll say that.
It does, until you realize that, like, my drawing a day is literally just, like, a circle with some, like, dashes on it, and I'm just like, it's a guy. There he is.
That's good perspective, then. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. No, that is good. Would you say that, you know, as you've kind of explored your style and, you know, worked on, you know, continuing to have, like, this healthy relationship with it, have you found that it, like, has tended towards lending itself better to, like, single images or more sequential sort of imagery. And if you do feel like it lends itself better to one over the other, how do you like change your approach when you're working on like one versus the other?
I like drawing both of those things. Whenever I am drawing a character in one particular state, my mind is constantly thinking, what did they look like before? What will they look like after? So for me, sequences are just kind of like a natural progression of these thoughts that I have. It's whenever I design a character, I usually start off with just like, you know, like a color palette or an idea, or I'll be like, well, he's a werewolf, so what kind of design elements can I use to kind of inform his human form? Or I'll start with a human character and I'll think, how can I make him look like the thing, the creature? And then when I draw the creature, I'm thinking about what kind of human traits I can give it that will make it look like the same character. Because that's one of the things that I like to try to do, that I like to be creative with. So I love when someone gives me a character and they say, make it something else, and they don't give me a reference for the other thing. Because that's my jam, my bread and butter, that's my whole sandwich. That's what I love to do. I love to design characters, and so if they give me a human character and say, can you make him a werewolf, I'll say, give me that. Give it. It's so fun. I also like drawing from references because some people, they want their character to look a very specific way. And I understand that, you know, we all have like very deep attachments to our personas. Like, this is us, you know. And a lot of times having that persona is the only way that we can express, you know, like ourself like safely. You know what I mean? So it's important for me that I want to be accurate when I'm given references. But if I'm not given a reference, I love just making stuff up, or I just want to get creative, and I want to try to like, I want them to look at it and see their character, but it's a different thing. That's my goal when I'm doing that kind of stuff. I think that's so fun.
Oh, that makes sense to me. I think that's a really great way of kind of getting to explore character creation, especially within the context of still like making art for other people. And the fact that, you know, you get that kind of excitement of like, you know, getting to create something new when you don't have references, like that is not a perspective I hear every day. So I'm really glad that that's something that you get a kick out of, because I mean, I'll say personally, when I don't get references, I get really stressed. So I'm glad that like it's almost like a fun challenge in a way. And of course, when you do have the references, you know, you want to also make sure that you're expressing it as best you can, so that you walk away happy and the commissioner walks away happy. I love
pose references. I will say that if someone sends me a pose reference, I put it in my mouth and I shake it around like a dog with like a frisbee. I go crazy for that stuff. I love that stuff. But I also love artistic freedom, but I also love like poses. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know we touched on it like a little bit before, but I guess just in terms of like, you know, pretending you don't see the follower count and all that stuff, did you feel like the growth that you did end up like experiencing was helped along by like the current social media system? Or do you feel like you almost like had those connections and growth happen almost in spite of it?
That's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because like the majority of my growth happened before Elon Musk bought Twitter and the algorithms changed dramatically to like stifle any kind of like self-promotion. So I would say that before that happened, before all of the changes to the website, I think that social media did play a big part in gaining a lot of my following, because I think I just happened to get seen by like the right people at the right time, and they like retweeted my art. You know, like bigger artists who had like 50,000 followers, 6,000 followers, they would retweet my art, or somebody would post it on a Reddit where it would have like a bunch more traffic, and people would come back to my site. I think that is what happened, because otherwise I can't explain what happened. Someone once DM'd me asking, they're like, "What's the secret of your success? How did you become popular?" And I was just like, I don't know. I legit, like, I post art every day. That might have something to do with it. I know the algorithm likes when you post every day, but I don't think that's a healthy thing for everyone to aspire to. You know what I mean? Because like, you don't. I don't think it's physically possible to like finish a whole piece of art every single day, especially if you're someone who draws more slowly. But I do think I just happened to get retweeted by the right people at the right time. And I think I got lucky in that regard.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I definitely think that there's a healthy amount of luck that goes into play with some of this stuff, unfortunately. And, you know, like you said, if the right people do the right retweeting or whatever, that can make a huge difference. But it's also good to know that, like, you know, you have just continued to, like, try to not pay attention to that side of things. Because as like Libra kind of alluded to earlier, if you get too hung up on, like, audience expectations and, like, the numbers and all that stuff, it can really skew people's relationships with their art. And especially for someone like yourself who really enjoys art just at a base level, you wouldn't want to, like, complicate or risk that good relationship.
Absolutely.
With art.
There have been times where I have had art block. You know, it happens. Even though I love art, you know, you can have, like, a point where you plateau and you feel like you're not growing or changing, and it's like, oh, I'm dissatisfied with my art, it's ugly, but then I'll post it anyway, you know, just to have something where it's just like, hey, I still need to draw, you know, I still feel the need to draw, and I'm drawing things anyway, so I might as well just post it, and then people still like it. Even though I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever created. Everyone's like, oh man, look at that, it's amazing. I try to think of that meme where, like, the artists have the two cakes and the guy's like, oh man, that guy's cake is way better than my cake, and the audience is just like, oh my gosh, two cakes. You know, I try to think of it that way, where, like, even if my cake looks like the Cake Gate Lady's cake, like the Rainbow Sprinkle Disaster, even if it looks like that, I'm gonna put it out there because somebody's gonna like it. It's still a cake, and I still made it, and I also think it's fun to keep, like, a record of when I go through different phases with my art, because your art's always changing. Like, I drew differently 6 months ago than I draw now. I drew differently, you know, 2 years ago than I draw now. And I think it's fun to kind of keep a blueprint of that and see my art as it changes and progresses. And, like, you can see drawings where I've struggled more, where, like, you know, you'll see something that doesn't look quite right, or something that looks awkward, you know. But then, like, you can see me kind of, like, working around that and refining my style and getting better at that kind of stuff. So I keep it even though I don't want to. And I think that's part of what helps me have a better relationship with my art, is that at the end of the day, I'm still doing my best, you know, and I'm still learning and growing, and I never want to come to a point where I just, like, where I hate drawing, you know what I mean? Because that can happen. You can burn out, and you can crash, and you can hate your art, and I don't want to reach that point. So I tend to be careful with how I approach that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. I mean, I will say, as someone who's only recently come out of the hating my art stuff, that does resonate with me, and, like, even then I'm saying like that, but it's like, you know, it's all baby steps and progression. It can be really difficult once you are in that headspace to find a way out, I find, and it took me a number of months before I was even able to, like, look at my stuff again. So yeah, it's tough. Trying to avoid getting in that space is always good, because it's difficult to climb out of that.
There was sometimes. A point, I will say.
Extremely.
Yeah, there was a point. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I'll say there was a point several years ago where I was having a very hard time, you know, just mentally. Everyone can relate. I was in a pretty rough spot in my life. There was a lot of depression going on, and the thing that had used to bring me joy, you know, making my art, I couldn't bear to draw. You know what I mean? It's one of the things where, like, I just was not functional, and there was, like, a period of my time where I went, like, almost a full year without doing anything more than just occasionally I would doodle something, just because, like, I had to, you know, just to get it out. and that was a very low point in my life. So it's like, when people are suffering from burnout, when they're going through these phases where they hate their art, where they're holding the pen and they cannot bring themselves to put it down to the tablet. It's like, I've been there. I feel like most creatives have been there, where we've had that really, really low point in our lives where, like, we just didn't find a joy in anything.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel that, which is why, coming out of that, and being able to love my art again. That's how I've kind of developed these ways to keep myself in a healthy relationship with my art. Because like here are all the things that happened to me in the past that I understand better now how I can navigate that with myself. It's very zen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I guess
I'm glad
I
to
had
know
one.
that through the adversity, you've come out of it that way. Good friend of ours, Doran, had transmitted a saying that says "pressure makes diamonds," which is, it's conditional, but there's a point to it.
Yeah, it depends on how much pressure and if you're cold or not. Yeah. I just say it's like,
Well, I said it's conditional.
yeah. Like, of course, we all aspire to become diamonds, but it's much easier said than done. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I want to ask just one more question before we go to the next topic, and that's just kind of, obviously you're very visibly tied to the transformation community, which is a niche at the end of the day. And I was wondering if you've ever felt restricted by being pigeonholed into the TF fandom at all, or if in fact that association with transformation has been freeing overall for you.
I think, when I first got into it, it was very freeing. But these days, like, even though I still really enjoy drawing transformation art, obviously it's still a really big part of my life and what I am into. Sometimes I want to draw something else. But people don't really.
Yeah.
I do feel the pressure to like please my audience because again, like I do love my audience, and I like making people smile with my art. I've gotten email from people talking about how like my art is validating for them. Like maybe they're going through like a time in their life where they're experiencing that body dysmorphia or that gender dysphoria, and they talk about how like my art makes them feel better. So like I do kind of feel a pressure and a need to want to like give the people what they want. But also I do kind of want to just sometimes draw like cutesy things. Sometimes I just want to draw like a wizard lizard or Pikachu eating an apple, or like or a girl. Sometimes I want to draw a girl.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think this ties back a little bit to what Libra was alluding to on the audience piece part too, because it's important that you feel like you can do that sort of exploration. And obviously it's great to bring smiles to people's faces, but, the smile on your face from your art is also the most important one, right? So, it can be tough sometimes to kind of like balance that sort of perceived like want from, the folks online versus what is perhaps the healthiest way for you to continue to produce personal art that you enjoy.
Something that's helped me a lot immensely is recently I've really gotten back into drawing traditionally. I went out and I bought a sketchbook and I covered it in little woodland animal stickers, and I got me some cheap pens and markers, and I have just been drawing whatever I want in my sketchbook. Like occasionally I'll take a picture of it with my phone and I'll put it on Twitter. Like it never gets very much traction because it's not finished art. It's not really the kind of stuff that my audience is particularly into, but like it's for me. And it's something that I can just have that like I don't have to show anybody else. I can just like, if I want to draw Pikachu eating an apple, he's in there. He's in that sketchbook and he's just for me. And it helps me kind of like divorce myself from the work environment because I'm not sitting at my desk with the iPad open, with the commission list in front of me. Like I'm at like the deli. I'm sitting at a table in the deli with my sketchbook, and there's like an old guy staring at me from the counter. But it's like removing yourself from that work environment is important because when your work environment is your home environment, you can sometimes get the wires in your little brain crossed, right? So when I'm at this desk, I'm at work. So even if I'm just drawing, like, to relax, I'm still at my desk. I'm still at work in my head. You know what I mean? But when I'm at the park, when I'm at the park in my sketchbook, I'm not at work. I'm just doodling whatever I feel like, just like I did when I was 12.
Yeah, good. That's exactly how it needs to be sometimes. That's why I was saying that the relationship that you have with your art is pretty good because it's the baseline of you love doing it rather than you need to get better or you need to or like the need is it's not really need, it's desire.
I definitely feel the need to get better.
Well, the need to get better is there, but your driving force is that you love your art. I don't know if you'd really be striving to do it every single day if you didn't love it. Everybody can do something every day, but they don't have to love it either. They can even be really good at it. It's different things. But yeah, the separation is really good to do, and yeah, you have to be able to make whatever you want. It makes me bristle whenever anybody says something like, this doesn't really do numbers, because that's when that's the kind of thing that's really hurt me in the past. Like, it just kind of built up, and like, due to my own stuff, it's the sort of thing that made me feel like, unless I'm doing something very particular and submitting myself to it, I'm not doing well in the eyes of other people. Which, when you're sharing your art online, you're looking to share the expressions that you have, whatever they are. And, then there's like the feeling of rejection that I had. So that happens. And that's why I've come to say something like, to have a healthy contempt for your audience. It's to protect oneself from feeling like they must, like, to like prevent that voice of, I need to make people happy, because it's incredibly fickle. And I'm glad you get to make people happy. I'm glad you get to that you get these messages about like, oh, you've helped people feel more affirmed or things like that. But the artistic journey is like really different for everybody, and depending on what you decide to express, it's not fun. So there's just been, I've had like a very mixed experience. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's all been negative. It's just like, it's different for everybody. So yeah, I just want you and people like you to be able to maintain that goodness and let that rise to the top more often. Because I really, really wouldn't want like the one weak point you have to be like hit by something one day when like shit just feels bad,
That's valid. I still don't think I could ever like contempt my audience. To me, it's more of just like, if they.
No, I'm not arguing for you to do that at all. I'm not doing that. I'm just giving you my perspective,
your perspective is valid.
maybe you can't really understand where I'm coming from with that, and this isn't my story though. So, but I'm just letting you know.
I get where you're coming from. I just look at it more like, if there's someone who actually likes my art and likes me, then they're happy when I draw literally anything. And if they want to unfollow me because I stopped drawing what they like, that's fine. I'm not offended by that. That's just kind of like a me thing though, where like I've come to a point where like, you like what you like and you don't like what you don't like.
Yeah, again, that's perfectly good. That's the thing to maintain.
I was curious to chat a little bit about kind of the focus you have in your art, because I think it's fair to say the majority of the body of your work focuses on were creatures, be it like, wolves or lions or any sort of other kind of animal. And so I was curious, obviously we've talked a little bit about, the influence that Willow had and some of the Don Bluth animations, but was there any like formative media in your mind that led to the focus on were creatures specifically?
I have always really liked them. When I was, we always had the werewolf books and stuff. When we were little kids, we used to read the R.L. Stein books, like Goosebumps or whatever, and there'd be like the werewolves or like the kids who turned into dogs, that kind of stuff. Another thing is I think werewolves are just really relatable for me as a person, because I am, shockingly, I am not that mentally well. So I know everyone was expecting me to like just be like completely normal, but I do have an affinity for werewolves, simply because I tend to relate to them being okay one minute and then the next minute it's just like, they're monsters and people treat them differently and look at them differently, and the relationship that has with that, where like I will sometimes be fine and other times I will I will be a monster. Like, that is just something that I relate to. Also, they look really cool.
They do look really cool. I do want to say, though, what you said actually really resonates with me from the perspective of like relating to mental illness a little bit, because I know at the very least when I was, kind of decoding what it was that made it tick, like various things, including werewolves and were-creatures. One of the things that actually had me shy away from it for a while was that sort of connection with mental illness, because in particular, I had a lot of emotional regulation problems. And so, to see everyone like, kind of glorifying this idea of like, oh, beasts, they like, they lose control and it's really hot and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, when I have issues with my emotions, I don't think anyone finds that hot,
yeah.
So like having that connection in my mind made it be like almost like maybe that's not actually a thing I like, because I feel a connection to it, but the reception I might get in like my personal life doesn't line up with that. And it took me a while to like work through that and be like, no, I think like, it can still be something that is to be clear, I'm very into it now, but like it took me a while to get back to that point after I made that connection in my mind. And I think that, a lot of times people make the analogy to like puberty and like, which is like entirely fair. And it's a tried and true metaphor. The Ginger Snaps movie.
It's literally just werewolf
fun
puberty.
fact.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, fun fact, that's actually filmed very close to where I grew up, and it's in Toronto,
that's really cool.
It's a very cool place. Yeah, but yeah, I feel like when I made the connection to like mental illness and like emotions and stuff, it took me a little while to like unpack that and then repack it up and like into a way that made sense for me. So it's interesting that you also felt like you kind of had that sort of connection from like a mental health perspective.
Yeah. So not to like turn the podcast into like mental illness awareness or anything, but I do tend to struggle with bipolar disorder. I have a form of that where it's manic depressive, and so like for me, I like related to werewolves because like people would just treat them normally and it would be okay as long as they were behaving normally, as long as they were humans. But as soon as like like they were werewolves, it was like, oh, we don't want to deal with you anymore, you're awful now, we hate you, we're not going to meet you in your space where you're at. Where it's like, again, the whole deeply conservative Christian family thing, whereas mental health was not real for our family growing up. If you had a mental health issue, you kept it to yourself. You were not allowed to experience emotions other than obedience and happiness. And
because then the response would be like, have you tried just not doing that?
Why?
The number of times I've heard that.
Why are you depressed? God loves you. That was...
God.
Just to be very clear, this podcast is very largely driven by the conversation on mental health with the people who are into this stuff.
That's fair, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Again,
like...
Yeah, because it's been 15 years. I have stories, so many stories. And it is a very important conversation to keep having.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we love going on tangents.
Yeah, I didn't want to like put like a negative stigma on it. It's just I don't enjoy personally.
There's no negative stigma.
Yeah.
There's no negative stigma. There's nothing. You weren't doing anything wrong.
Okay.
Look, some stuff is harmful to people, whether it's making them feel good in the moment, or at least how it's being handled. And otherwise, I don't see anything wrong with stigmatizing the kind of stuff that you've been put through, because the stuff that you've been put through, again, I have stories, and your story is one of many.
Yeah.
So I'm not really surprised. It's more like chalk another one up. This is how you make people feel miserable. You could have been exploring all this in a different way, but
in a healthier environment.
Yeah, but now on top of expressing the things you like and exploring these other things, you also have to deal with a whole set of shit that was thrown onto you that you didn't deserve, and a lot of people don't deserve. So, I'm totally okay with people saying like, yes, I also went through this. It's a good thing to do. I am always quick to just let people know that they're not alone, and that plenty of people made it through, and even when it's not easier, it's tougher. There's a way through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to have that kind of community or support group when you have that kind of stuff. especially when you're growing up in an environment where people don't understand or you yourself were never diagnosed. So you would have these experiences and you would feel these emotions, but you didn't know why or where it was coming from. And the only conclusion was, I'm broken. I don't work right. I was the family scapegoat growing up, you know what I mean? Whereas like I tended to get blamed for a lot of stuff because I was the abnormal child. So a lot of those feelings of like shame and ostracization, I related to the monster characters. You know, I related to the werewolves, where like my family didn't really want me around either. which isn't to say they loved me, but they did not understand me. They did not respect me, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
No, it does. And I think that, you know, a lot of my stuff was more on like the ADHD and like anxiety spectrum, but regardless, sometimes there would be like, you know, the emotions are too big or whatever, and then it's like, well, we don't want that, you know, why can't you just be normal? So I think kind of connecting that to the othering that like a lot of were creatures and monsters get is like it's a time-honored tradition that a lot of people have done and made, and so it makes sense to me why that would then become a particular thing of interest for you.
Also, again, going back to my extreme body dysmorphia growing up, like I did not even know what a trans person was until I was like in my teens, and then of course when I found out, I was, you know, we were told that was a bad thing. And so like I never told myself that my feelings were valid, or that like I didn't understand my feelings or why I was having them. I never identified that way growing up. I was just deeply uncomfortable with my body. I was deeply ashamed, you know, and all of these feelings that didn't have a name, that had nowhere to go. And again, werewolves, like, you know, they get really big and hairy, and they're scary, and their bodies are weird. And I was just like, I relate to that. I also don't feel comfortable with my body. One of the drawings that I made earlier on, when I first made my Twitter, one of the ones that got really popular, was a drawing of my character where he was having a dysmorphic moment where he didn't recognize himself as a werewolf, because in his mind, he's not a werewolf. He doesn't identify that way. He's a person. So when he sees himself as a werewolf, he gets scared. He gets upset. He doesn't understand how to feel about it. And that, again, was me exploring those feelings that I had growing up. You know what I mean? Where it's like I would look in the mirror and be like, that's not me.
No, that makes sense.
I hate that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm going to relate on that front, both on the not having a clear understanding as to like, you know, what being like trans or non-binary or what have you means, and also like not being comfortable with yourself growing up. I totally get you there. And I'll say that, you know, one of the things that I appreciate about the community, and in particular, like pulling it back to the were creatures too, like there are ways in which we can express and represent ourselves in artwork as, you know, the monstrous or what have you, that to other people who also find that interesting and attractive potentially. And it can be almost a little bit jarring sometimes when like you get to portray yourself in that way and someone's like, oh, I find that really hot, for example. And it's like, I've never heard that before about in any way related to me. So like, I don't know how to react to that at first, you know,
well,
like
when I first started off drawing Elias, if you go back like 2 years and look at my earlier drawings, he's much more monstrous. He is not at all conventionally appealing or attractive, but then people started to find him conventionally appealing and attractive. So I kind of leaned into that. I was like, all right, I'll make him a little bara free. I'll make him a little more conventionally attractive, because it was validating. You know what I mean? where it's like even though this character is having a very bad time, everyone's like, "Aw, but I like him," and I was just like, "Aw, that's nice."
Yeah. Well, the fact that you've kind of leaned away from that, I think, like, you know, obviously, were creatures are often like a combination of like human and animal. And it sounds like maybe you prefer the more bestial results. And I wonder if like it looks like you like the more bestial results. And so I'm kind of wondering if like, you know, the fact that you pulled back from that, did that like, is that something you miss, or like you wish you could kind of like go back
Oh no, I still draw that way all the time. I still enjoy drawing that the scary, nasty werewolves. That was just like that one character in particular. Is everybody started viewing him as a comfort character and wishing he looked a little softer. So I just was like, I'll just tidy him up, make him a little softer. And at this point in my life, my relationship with myself had gotten to a better point, to where I felt like felt like drawing him where he is like becoming, drawing him in a more human light, drawing him looking less like he was going to eat your babies. It made sense to me at the time because, again, people liked it and I liked it. It made me feel nice. and so I was like, he's not really a monster anymore. Now he's just a guy with a little furry problem.
Would you say that when you kind of like started to like hone in on this like kind of softer look, were there like any particular things that you wanted to make sure you pulled in? Like, obviously I know like he has a tail and such, but like, were you thinking about like tail versus no tail, or like digitigrade versus planigrade, or like stuff like that when you were starting to like refine his design a little bit?
He basically looks the same, except he's got like an anime hair tuft. But I mean, his face is softer, where like he emotes more human now, where like he's not just a snarling, vapid creature, where like his expressions are much more human. Like he has like a softer face, but like for the most part, his design has stayed pretty consistent. It was more of me kind of like accepting that like he was a guy. Like he didn't have to be like the village menace. I also gave him a boyfriend.
That makes sense. I mean, you love that for him, so
he's living his best life.
I'm curious. Oh, absolutely. I'm curious to ask this because, like, I think like when people focus on were creatures a lot, there's like different thoughts on like how tied that ends up being to like the moon, and like obviously werewolves have that rich historical history, but for a lot of other creatures, being connected to like changing with the cycles of the moon kind of drops off. So I was curious to ask if you have any thoughts on what makes being connected to like lunar changes so interesting that it can then be mapped to other animals that are not wolves.
Kind of going back to my bipolar disorder. It's on a cycle, and the moon is also on a cycle. So for me, it's like this cyclical kind of like loss of self that I find interesting, that I kind of want to preserve in my art, because again, that's kind of relating to myself and my experiences and how I like to process my stuff, all that stuff I got going on.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm going to put a pin in the loss of control stuff for just a second, but I wanted to ask one other question on were creatures. Do you have like a favorite way to see people transfer their like wearism to someone else? Is it like, like, are you a stickler for the bites, or like another method that you think is like really innovative that you really appreciate, or anything like that?
I think if we're going with the classics, putting on a cursed item is my favorite. Like there's a lot of Greek tales of guys putting on the wolf pelts and turning into werewolves. I thought that was the best, because like biting someone is only something that happened in like old Hollywood movies. Like it was never a traditional werewolf myth. That was never a thing. And as a teenager, I was very adamant that we stick to historical accuracy. I was like, Hollywood's not going to ruin this for me. So I do sometimes like to play around with the bites just because it's fun. But personally, for me, my favorite is the cursed article of clothing, the wolf pelt or the collar or something akin to that. Like there was some point I did a story with a character who put on a cursed wolf tooth necklace. There you go. Anything can be a fun toy.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that you kind of gravitate towards the more quote-unquote historically accurate perspective, because I think a lot of times, and I've kind of noticed this in general, like a lot of times people do default to the bites and such, and I mean, I also find it attractive, so like, I get it. But, it's nice to also see different kind of permutations on how people can like get the quote unquote affliction. I mean, I think we'd mostly be happy with that quote unquote affliction, but like, it's nice to see that kind of come from a different place than the stereotypical Hollywood fashion is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
I think another motivating factor is I draw my werewolves really big. Like, they're really big when I draw them. So if they bit somebody, they would probably just die from trauma or blood loss. So it doesn't really make sense that they would probably just die if a 12-foot tall werewolf bit you. You'd probably just go. So it didn't.
Some people have done the scratch thing either as well, because like I don't know, there's like different, like you could play the transmission ways all you want. I remember there's this one comic where this girl climbs a mountain and commits to the fact that she wants to be a dragon. She doesn't get bit. She just takes a scratch to her palm and it changes her.
There was a show growing up, Aladdin the animated series. I feel like it is a cult classic. After getting to know more people in the TF community, I feel like it was very formative for a lot of people. But there was, the episode where they turn into snake monsters, or the episode where she's turning everyone in the village into like the cat monsters. But the trigger there was just saying that like they, just drinking the Kool-Aid. But so there's a lot of fun things that you could do with that. Gargoyles. We all love us. We all love us some gargoyles. I want you to know my mother thought gargoyles. That was the most satanic cartoon to ever exist. And she did not want us to watch it. She was like, it brings an evil presence into the home. This is Satan's cartoon. And so what we would...
It's just a reunion show for all the Star Trek Next Generation actors.
I'm just like it's
please.
Keith David, and he's a hot shirtless monster man, and I'm not having it. Listen, we will be watching Gargoyles. Yeah. So what we would do is we would we would run the tape recorder after, because it would come on around I think it was pretty late for us because we were little kids, but it was around 8 or 9 or so. And what we would do is we'd stealthily set the tape recorder, because we had VHS back then. We did not have DVDs. We would, because DVDs existed, we just didn't have one. So we would.
I'm from that era too. Don't worry, I know what you're talking about.
It was like that odd transition phase, like late 90s, early aughts, where we still had VHS players. And we would record the show, and then we would watch it when she was gone.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm glad you got to still experience it, despite the arduous, stealthy mission that you had to go on to
Listen, me and my brother were committed. We were going to watch Gargoyles.
No, as you should be. It was Gargoyles.
He liked the action stuff. So, he liked the robots and the gunships and the Xanos, and I liked the hot monster men. What can I say? I liked the guys who turned into leopards. That was the best episode.
That was honestly very good.
All right, go on.
I'm not gonna lie. No, I do love Gargoyles. I'll put in the session recording chat something, but I love Gargoyles. I guess the thing I also want to just touch on was loss of control, because it's come up once or twice now, and it's definitely something I noticed in a lot of your pieces. Like, there's a lot of themes regarding loss of control over a variety of things, and so you've kind of talked a little bit as to its connection with your stuff with bipolar, but I was curious, was that the only thing that was drawing your interest towards losing control over a form or mobility or freedom or what have you, or was there something else also that was playing into that interest?
I think we have to go deeper. We have to get psychological now. It is possibly to do with the fact that I was an extremely obedient kid. I was very straight-laced. I never skipped classes. We had the straight A's. I would take extra classes after school and tutoring and stuff. And I would, I wanted to be the good kid. And a lot of that time it was choices that I don't think I would have made if I wasn't trying to please my parents, who demanded this strict obedience, you know what I mean? Where it's I liked school because school was validating because I was good at school. You know what I mean? It's I was good at the rote memorization stuff. I could regurgitate whatever facts you fed me. And the teachers would pat me on the head and be like, oh, what a bright child. I was really just looking for validation. I would forget it all a week later, But as long as I got an A on the test, I was happy. So for me, again, to the point where I felt like I was not in control of my life. I was just coloring in the numbers someone had put in front of me. I was just on the railroad tracks. This is how you're supposed to behave, etc., etc. So that's one of the themes I explore in my drawing, where it's like, I don't feel free. I feel like I'm chained. I feel like, I feel like a wild animal in a cage. So that was one of the things that interested me. And then it's also just a kink. Just being honest.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, we are very, very kink positive here. Trust me. So
the whole do as you're told thing. But I also have a lot of anxiety around losing control, because again, control was not something that I had for a majority of my life, and I still feel to this day that I don't have a lot of control in my life, so that's one of the things that I like to focus on with my characters, where it's like, they were okay.
Would you say it's almost like, you're taking that sense of a loss of control and then reinterpreting it through a lens of something you like to find a bit of peace with it in a way?
I think it just became a kink. I'm gonna be
Okay, that's fair too. I mean, yeah.
I think it's just all it is.
I mean, leashes and collars are great, so I get it. Although I will say, and I thought about this because we've actually had a guest on before who talked about this specific concept, Lumen.
I love Lumen.
A lot of the changes I noticed, sometimes it would, losing the thumbs. You know where I'm going with this. It's a familiar interest, and I was wondering if that interest stemmed from watching others go through it, or you really enjoy it when it happens to yourself, or a combination of those two, or something else. Where did that kind of interest spark from?
I like my hands a lot. All of my work I do with my hands. I experience the world so often through my hands. So that's one of my anxieties, is that I would no longer have dexterous hands. So it just became a kink.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
A lot of my anxieties just manifest themselves as kinks. I don't really have an explanation. That is how I cope. Is I'm just actually, wait, it would be sexy if I had paws. There you go. The brain gives me the thumbs up. They're like, that's better.
Yeah. Do you like it when the thumbs go away first, or do you like it being the kind of shining moment at the end?
So I usually for myself, when I do my personal art, I like to do the transformation. I don't really so much focus on one part at a time. I know that's a popular thing for a lot of artists, where they'll do oh, now you have ears. Oh, now you have paws. Now you have a tail. The way I like to do it is your whole body is just going at once. And so you get these weird in-between stages. So for me, it would just kind of happen at the midpoint, as the hands go from hands into paws. It wouldn't really be at the start or at the end. It's just somewhere in the middle, which I think is more fun for me personally, because then you have to spend the rest of the time without any hands. Very sad. How are you gonna get your clothes off? Oh no, you'll have to rip them off. Oh no. Yeah. That's so embarrassing, haha.
It's truly just such an unfortunate, unfortunate time.
You get me. Hee hee, oh no.
No, I get
Blushes,
you.
Ooh woo. What if? Yeah.
Ooh woo.
Growing out of them is also just fun, if that gets to happen.
Oh yeah. It's all 100%.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I dig it. I very much dig it. I guess then the collaring and the leashing in particular comes up a lot in your artwork, and so obviously you've talked about how it's a kink, and that's been kind of distilled through some of the other background lore for yourself, as it were. But with the lore, I like to call it lore. It makes it more interesting. When I'm making a blorbo, I'm okay, so let's take their backstory and then call it lore, and then give them some traumas, and then go from there. But yeah. I digress.
No, you're good. I like it.
Do you find that with the collaring and the leashing, does it heighten for you the distance between one's original human form to where they are now, or does the attraction still just kind of reside from how it's been filtered through some of the other stuff we've already talked about?
So I started off drawing my werewolf characters wearing the collars, because in my stories that I like to write in my head, I do not write them down, unfortunately. They exist in my head alone. But in those stories, being a werewolf is a thing that people are aware of, but obviously it's a dangerous thing. So, because you're not really fully in control as a werewolf, so obviously it would be dangerous to live around other people if you are a werewolf. So they wear these collars. They are government mandated collars that they wear in order to be
okay.
in order to kind of like track them, and also to like help subdue their transformations. Like they don't. Yeah. So that's kind of where it started. Why they're all wearing collars is just that was just part of the story for my characters, the setting that they're in. Like if you were living out in the woods, you wouldn't need one. But like living in the city, like they would make you wear one. You'd have to go get it. It would just be like you'd have to register yourself as a werewolf, you know, kind of. And it had a lot of stigmatization around it. You know what I mean? Because it's like someone would look at you and see you wearing the collar and be like, "Oh, he's a werewolf. He's not safe. He's not like us." You know, kind of a thing. And so like Elias, my character that I drew a lot, his thing was he was always very embarrassed by the collar. But he wore it anyway, mostly because he did not like himself, and he didn't like his werewolf self, and so it was kind of a way for himself to publicly shame himself that he would do. Yeah. So that is why all my characters are wearing them.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, that's really interesting. Did you feel like when you kind of came up with that idea, were you like also kind of like internally working out some of your own like issues around maybe like how you felt you were presenting to the world?
So obviously there is a lot of stigmatization around, you know, people who have mental health issues, and these are things that I had experienced in the past, you know, where like it's not immediately obvious when you look at me that I'm not, you know, neurotypical, but people tend to cue in on it pretty quick after a couple of conversations where it's like, oh, you're weird. You know, kind of a thing. So it's like I was kind of used to being treated differently and looked at differently, and you know, like I growing up, we didn't really have a lot of like nice new clothes. A lot of my clothes were hand-me-downs from older siblings, so I always was wearing kind of like clothes that were too big, clothes that were shabby and old, you know, like clothes that had been like mended a couple of times, and so like people would look at me and there would, again, be like that judgmental kind of thing there. So that was something I think that kind of like leaked over into that.
I think it's so weird to live in a place where people get that way. I've dealt with so many kinds of people that the shades of gray have always been there for me for as long as I can remember. Like, there are a number of people that, for instance, at some points with my circle of friends, where they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know about this," and I'm like, "Don't worry, they're fine." And you know, I'd get some like, "Huh? How do you know?" I'm like, "Well, because they're just a little weird like this, but ultimately they're okay. I don't think there's anything to worry about." And people giving you shit for some of that, there's just like, I don't know. I sometimes really am amazed that those pockets still exist, but that's the way it is.
They're
sucks.
They're very real, especially because I grew up in a small town, a very conservative southern town. So I got picked on a lot as a kid because I would read a lot of books, and I liked manga, which manga was not a big thing when I was a little kid. Like, we had Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, and that was for nerds. Like, being a nerd was not popular when I was growing up. Like, if you liked Spider-Man, you were a nerd. You know what I mean? Like, now it's like popular and mainstream to like Spider-Man, but like in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you liked Spider-Man, you were a nerd. If you liked X-Men, you were a freak. It's interesting to think about how culture has changed just like in our lifetime, but that was kind of the experience. Is I would walk around and I'd have my books, you know, and I'd wear my shabby clothes, and I laughed a little too loudly. I talked a little too fast. Yeah, I didn't. Not
very ladylike.
Yeah, I did not fit in. Interesting enough, most of my bullies were girls. Make of that what you will, because I wasn't a conforming girl. So when other girls saw me, they were like, "Ew."
You can be any gender and still be upholding like issues related and stemming from the patriarchy. So like, doesn't
interesting.
surprise me.
Interestingly enough, but it is what it is. So that was something that like my characters were, in the story they were stigmatized against, like they were judged. They were visibly different, and obviously, like, it's much more blatant if they're wearing a collar than just, like, looking
of course,
weird, But, again, it was easily codified, and I liked drawing collars. I think they're fun. They're, like, a cute little design thing. And also they're sexy. There we go.
Yeah, they are.
They doubled as fetish gear. It was great. I'm just like, I've hit a jackpot here.
I dig it. Awesome. Well, we did have some audience questions that I wanted to make sure that we left some time for. And the first question we got was from Fire, and they asked or said, name a hyperfixation you have and try and come up with a TF that incorporates as many of them as you can to some degree.
So
I don't know if you'd like to go first, or
I think that K-Libra should go first because he's been kind of quiet for a bit.
I try to do that like a lot, but it's, I don't know. I have my indulgent ones. The way I indulge often is just in just a few qualities or one thing. So I don't think I have a hyperfixation on anything in particular. There's just a bunch of things that, I like a lot of things, and my moods change depending on whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that some people are all about paws, all about tails, all about this, all about that. I am not that kind of person. And one day I could really be into the people who make that sort of thing because they can satisfy me for that time. But I don't know what to say about, like, if I can make one that could satisfy all of them. I put all of them in. I time it differently so that different parts have like more presence. I don't know. It's just kind of like yes, I can do it, and cool.
That's valid.
Yeah. If I had to like name one and then build a TF around it, I mean, I'm looking. You can't see it, but I'm looking at my desk right now, and I have like 8 different Rocket Raccoon Funkos on my desk. So I guess I'm gonna name him for this one. And I guess like if I Thank you. And if I had to I guess name or create a TF that incorporates as many hyperfixations into that, I mean, you could go something along the route of there's a focus on the tail and the paws because I like those things. Maybe there's some smell play involved, I guess. Maybe there's a focus on some mental changes to get more into his character, and focus on the snout growth and all that good stuff. I think that would incorporate quite a few of them, but I also like Rocket Raccoon, so yeah.
Nice. That sounds like a good time to me.
Thank you.
I happen to have some very specific hyperfixations, which we have talked about extensively on this podcast, namely werewolves, collars, loss of control, that kind of stuff. But I also since very young childhood, I have had a fixation on Pokemon. Love those games. I had a fixation on at one point. Dragons, specifically there were these books I read called the Dragonlance Chronicles, and I read there was 30
Dragonlance
books, and I read
Chronicles,
all of them. And then younger than that, when I was 8, I devoured all 50 of the Animorphs books in a 2-week session of just reading them.
A person of taste,
exactly.
I see.
Oh, man. Marco, my beloved, my favorite character.
I was more of a Rachel person, but I also support Marco.
I liked Rachel a lot. My favorite character, I think, was Cassie, just because I related to her on a personal level, because I'm also soft, and but I want to be taken seriously, kind of a thing. But Marco was for fan service reasons, Marco was my favorite. I was because as a kid, I was like Marco seems like he'd be really cute, So that was my childhood crush was Marco from Animorphs. But anyway, so for me, back to the question. So
yes.
I would probably have a TF that incorporates the harness. It'd have to be a collar. We could go full doggy. We could go with a nice dog looking werewolf.
Oh yeah.
And we would have my girlfriend would be there because she is my other hyperfixation. 'Cause I love
amazing,
I
and
love
as
the,
she
I
should
love
be.
the GF. I love the puppy GF. She would be there. She can hold my leash. That'd be good. Yeah, and then of
Amazing.
course we'd have to kind of like we would have to have the paws. We'd have to have like the ripped clothes. Oh, also the moon would be there.
Hell yeah,
And
No, that
everyone
sounds
would
great.
clap.
Oh, of course.
Everyone
Would be cheering as it comes into full view.
And Obama was there. No, okay.
Amazing. And oh my god. The other question I had is from Duck, and so he said, in art, written, or audio, how do you think the situation is changed when multiple people are transforming? Does this enhance your appreciation, or is it better when the focus is on just one person's
Okay,
journey?
I think you need to go first this time.
Okay, so I find that like when multiple people are transforming in a scene, for me personally, if it goes beyond 2 or 3, I find it can get a little bit distracting. I really like it when it's like 2 people as an example, because you can get a lot of interplay off of both people reacting both to themselves and to each other. The classic one person notices the other person is TFing first and such, and then it kind of goes downhill from there, or uphill, depending on how you want to view it. So I generally do find it can really enhance my appreciation. But again, I think once it's past like 3 people, if it's like a huge group, for example, of people that are transforming, it gets a little bit disconnected in my mind in terms of like connecting with each character. And I prefer like the more focused character journey for like 1, 2, or 3 people.
Yeah, it keeps it
generally
more intimate. All right,
Yeah.
K-Libra's turn.
I just like 1 or 2 people. It's a thing that I like enjoyed in a very focused sort of way. So I've never been into the giant masses of people just everywhere, turning into animals, becoming beasts and everything. Total chaotic breakdown. Never really been like an orgy guy either. So it's
I
just,
feel
yeah.
and even though like I guess a threesome is the most indulgent, because I also think like what the fuck are you gonna do, you know? That's how it is for me. I got a bunch of reasons, but like 1 or 2 people is fine. I feel like this question's been asked before.
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
There's just but there's been a lot of instances where I just thought, a nice couple of people is just a really good way of playing with transformations and scenarios and stuff. And yeah, that's it.
How about you, Kota?
I like all of those situations. For different reasons, obviously, like, when it's just yourself, like the self-exploration, that is like a really cool theme, because again, that was like a lot of the stuff that I went through with, where it was again just like exploring myself and finding out about myself. And so like, the transformation is cool. I like it when like, like if it's one person, I like when it's a slower transformation. Maybe it's like extended like a week or something, and they're attempting to like cope with or cover up the changes, or maybe they like them. Either way, it's fun. 2 people is ideal, obviously, because for the reasons mentioned above, it's fun to have somebody, or especially if like one person starts transforming because the other person's transforming, that one's fun. We love that trope. Very trope. And then like as it relates to like multiple people, I think that's fun too. Like again, citing Pleasure Island or Willow, where it was like a bunch of people, where it's like it's not so much about the intimacy, it's more about the spectacle at that point. But I like me a little bit of spectacle too, so I'm still into that, absolutely. And also asking about human participation. Yes, I think humans are great. I love humans. I know a lot of humans. But I do think it's more fun, especially with the loss of control aspects, if there is a human participant and then like a participant who is turning into the creature. I think that's a great dynamic that lends itself well to some good kink scenarios, in my humble opinion.
Hell yeah. I endorse
so
this, so I
yeah,
think
basically
that's
every
fun
scenario, I like it.
Chef's kiss.
Mwah.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, that was all the questions I had for you. I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Not particularly. Just thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I was very nervous, but you guys were very cool and very welcoming, and it was fun talking with you guys about my experiences and your experiences as well. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad to hear that. And I appreciate you making the time to come on. And of course, if people are looking for you online, where can they find you?
I'm KotaCat4, all one word, except 4 is a number, not a word. So just KotaCat with the number 4 on Twitter and Blue Sky. I don't post on my Blue Sky very often, unfortunately, because I'm dumb and I forget it's there. But I have one if you don't like Twitter. I also have KotaCat4 on Fur Affinity. I haven't updated it in 2 months. So if you follow me there, you will be subjected to feast and famine. Occasionally, I will just dump 50 drawings there, just out of the blue every few months. If you're into that, follow me there. It's just
I can relate to that because I am very good at keeping my Twitter up to date, and then everything else is like I'm still catching up. So
what happens is like
it's work to just do all that.
Uploading to
so
Fur
much
Affinity
work.
takes 10 years. It takes so long to put a drawing on Fur Affinity because their website is running on like I don't know, it's like Stone Age internet over there. But
something that helps is what is it? FBUI.
Oh, Postyburb.
No, not Postyburb. There's a different thing.
Like an add-on for Affinity that makes posting easier.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's called FBUI or something like that, but it's like or FABUI, like better for Affinity, better user interface, something like that, and it makes uploading a lot smoother and a lot more comprehensive, and you can upload several things at once automatically, and. Yeah, and you could just drag and drop shit. I don't remember what it was like before that.
Because I like,
but
because I like my Fur Affinity, but like updating it is strenuous, and so like once I start falling behind, I start falling further behind because I'm like, oh no, I have more things that I need to upload, so that it makes me like even less want to do it.
Yeah, I found it. Yep. So if you got like Firefox or you have Chrome.
Excellent.
Then the extension is on both of those. Very much. It's really good.
Yeah. I will say.
Yeah,
I will say if you do follow my Fur Affinity, again, there will just be content dumps randomly. So if you don't like that, don't follow me there. Follow me on the Twitter. But if you like that stuff, follow me on Fur Affinity. I also do occasionally post spicier things to my Fur Affinity than I am allowed to post on my Twitter. So viewer discretion is advised.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much to everyone for listening this week. I hope y'all enjoyed listening as much as we did recording, and as always, I hope that everyone stays healthy and drinks their water and gets some good rest, because Libra and I haven't been getting as good rest, so get it for us at least, and, keep an open mind and stay TFy.
Yay.
Yep. Enjoy yourself. The night is fun.
Hell yeah.
Right,
See y'all later.